Fight Night Picks fans, I did you dirty. I buried the lead and I waited until Piera Rodriguez is taking on Gillian Robertson to let it go. Now, I did throw it out there on my Twitter, so if you follow me there, you did see it, but we have 5 total fighters on this card that are either moving up or down in weight, and we have one in this matchup right here. You can see it on screen. Gillian Robertson moving down to 115 pounds for the first time in years, and she's going to be taking on Venezuela's own La Fiera, Piera Rodriguez, who went 2-0 in her UFC turn back last year, wins over Kay Hansen and Sam Hughes, and some really gritty wins there, as well as on Dana White's Contender Series, now taking on the best flyweight grappler the UFC has ever had in the women's division in Gillian Robertson.
On a numbers basis.
Flyweight submission wins in the company's history. And I'm a little bit surprised that Robertson's moving down to 115 for this matchup, because the last time we saw her out there, she took on Maria Agapova. They had trained together at American Top Team. There's a built-in rivalry. And in the first round, Agapova won that round, hands down. I mean, every time that Robertson went for a takedown entry, went to close the distance, we mentioned it in the breakdown, she holds her hands out, she doesn't move her head, and even the commentary was saying she's closing her eyes anticipating these shots. It's really bad. She went for a couple takedown attempts on that high crotch single leg to where she was eating those Travis Brown elbows. She was eating punches. And then in the second round, Maria makes a little bit of a fatal flaw mistake. Gillian gets the rear naked choke submission, does not get a performance bonus. That was one of the most disgusting submission losses I've ever seen, and I watched it about 5 times yesterday, and it still makes me sick to my stomach now.
Why'd you watch it 5 times then? This is the weird thing about this fight. For Gillian Robertson, I do worry about her at 115 pounds, and this is why. She actually fought at 115 pounds in her amateur career, and she didn't look good on the scales at all. This is a big point that they talked about on The Ultimate Fighter when she was actually on the show.
She missed weight against Hannah Cifers. The one fight before she went on The Ultimate Fighter, weighed 116.5. The last time she made the weight was in 2016.
Exactly. So that's just a point that has to be brought up, because again, it's something that she has done before, but she also hasn't been able to do it when she was contractually obligated to. So I will think the weight cut is a big part of this fight, because the Gillian Robertson that we all kind of know at 125 is a fighter who is very set in her ways. And I mean that with some positives and with some negatives, because like you would bring up with the Agapova fight, when she goes for takedowns, she will kind of go on her knees and get really heavy to try to pull her opponent to the ground. Now, when she's able to get on top of her opponent, she maintains that weight and that strength with her top position. She does a great job of busting up her opponent with ground and pound to then try to get to the back and use her rear naked choke. But the problem is, when she's not able to get the fight into some of those set positions that she does really excel at, this is something we talked about with Antonina Shevchenko back in the day. It was, hey, when it's just like doing drills, she's probably amazing. But when it's at game speed, there does tend to be a bit of a lag there. And with Gillian Robertson, it's not that there's a lag when it comes to game speed. I just worry about what version of her we're going to get when she's not able to get the fight where she exceeds that, and that's in the top position.
And for Robertson, again, a long-time American Top Team fighter, but she switched things to the goat shed, and I gotta give a shout out to her coach. It's Asim Zaidi. He's done a great job. Like, really, that gym has continued to progress. I know Hannah Goldie trains there with Robertson. Again, former foes, because they fought in Robertson's pro debut, but they train together now. Goldie's gonna work your striking. But when you look at it for Robertson, not just the win over Agapova that won over a lot of fans, kind of wins her over in that overall submission category, she headlined Fury Grappling number 6. And who did she take on, Matt? Rose Namajunas. And in that one, they meet in the center. Robertson presses it to the corner of the mat. Robertson grabs a leg, flips to the back, and chokes out Rose Namajunas by rear naked choke.
No threat strikes, though.
Really quickly, and Robertson looked amazing in that one. But still, it's one of the greatest women's fighters of all time, Rose Namajunas.
Oh, no, I agree, but still, I don't take that much from that. You have a fighter who really struggles defensively on the feet and on the ground, knowing she can't get hit, so she's much more likely to go for anything.
For Robertson, the 2 fights where we've really kind of seen the game plan stifled, the one against Tyler Santos, she got ground out, and then the fight against Miranda Maverick. Maverick was just kind of step ahead on the ground. This just happens to be a clash of styles fight. Piera Rodriguez is one of the better boxers that you're going to see in this division. And the best part about Rodriguez is she keeps that lead hand out there to kind of paw her distance.
Exactly.
For a smaller fighter at 5'3", 63.5-inch reach, which I know is a little bit more than Robertson, but not the greatest for the division. But she throws in combinations, mixes things in very, very well, and has great lateral movement on the outside. And for a boxer on the outside, that's how she's won these fights in the UFC. And the older fighter, surprisingly, in this fight as well.
I just worry about her getting caught up against the cage in some of those scenarios, because I agree with you. Rodriguez is the much more talented fighter, especially on the feet. And not only with her movement, because I do agree with you, I think that's going to be a huge part. Her hand speed is going to be so much faster than Gillian Robertson's that if she can prevent her back from being on the mat, I think she will have a lot of success on the feet, because Robertson's a fighter who will throw a lot from the outside, kind of to try to corner her opponent to then try to get it down to the mat. Not really using her striking just for striking sense to win a lot of those moments. So I do think this fight is kind of an oil and water type matchup to where if Robertson gets that top position, she's pretty darn strong at 125 pounds. So I can only imagine how strong she's going to be at 115 pounds, but with the huge caveat of she has to be able to make that weight successfully and still look good on the scales while she is able to make the fight.
And it'll be interesting too. Piera Rodriguez, for her last fight, she trained a little bit out of All-Stars. You know them for Chimaev, Gustafsson, so on and so forth.
Alir Latifi.
Reza Madadi. See, I pronounced his name correctly that time. And Alir Latifi as well. Primarily trains out of Black House MMA. You know that gym for Alexander Volkov his last time out, but Coach Kenny Johnson, who's been around the block a time or two. So when you look at this matchup, Matt, the odds are about par. Again, Robertson's had so many fights in the UFC. Rodriguez still young in the game, but even her win on Contender Series over Valeska Machado, Valeska went over to Invicta, won the tournament, won the belt over there. So it definitely holds some water there. We have a look at the Tapology votes, Matt. Surprise to us there to you. I'm going to say over under 65% Robertson in the fight.
I think they'll be under.
I think they're going to be under. You looked at these beforehand. 1,008 total votes, 53% Rodriguez, 83% by decision for the 47% that have Robertson, surprise, surprise, 72% by submission. Matt, is it Port St. Lucie's own by way of Niagara, Canada? Is Gillian Robertson going to get the win, or do you have Piera Rodriguez on the outside?
I have Rodriguez, but... and this is a big but. If Gillian Robertson looks fine on weigh-in day, I can openly admit I might change my mind by question mark kicks, because I do think the physicality of her wrestling could be enough of an X factor to where she could be able to get this fight to the mat and submit Rodriguez. Like, I know Molly McKay is not the greatest fighter in the world, but she is a very strong fighter who has good offensive wrestling of her own, has good boxing, and has good power. A lot of the same boxing that Piera Rodriguez does check off, so I could see Robertson having success in the matchup, but I will ever so slightly go with Rodriguez.
Rodriguez also trains out of Ruka Sport, out of all of the gyms. Primary training partner Sabina Mazow, but as well, if you go to Ruka Sport, Mackenzie Dern's in some of those pictures as well. So when you do look at the matchup, I'm ever so slightly going to go with Piera Rodriguez, just based on the defensive striking out of Gillian Robertson when it is on the feet. And if the game plan doesn't go 100% according to plan, it can kind of go off the rails a little bit. Robertson obviously looked amazing her last time out, so I'm kind of on the fence with you. I got to see it on weigh-in day for Friday. This is more of a preview than it is for a prediction, so a lot of people are going to boo this one, but we want to hear from you. You guys help drive the show. Let us know down below in the comment section who you have in the matchup. Some great fights left on this card. Holloway versus Allen in the main event. You're not going to want to miss it. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks. We always say, let's get into it.